The king will not survive the third sunrise. The royal physician's trembling words echoed through the shattered throne room as another distant war horn rolled across the mountains. Outside the palace walls, thousands of enemy banners were already gathering beneath the storm-dark sky. Inside, Alpha King Magnus Blackthorne lay motionless upon a blood-stained stone platform, his breathing growing weaker with every passing minute. A cursed blade had pierced at his heart during the emergency peace summit, leaving even the kingdom's greatest healers powerless. The royal council reached the same terrifying conclusion. Without their Alpha King, North Moon would fall within 3 days. Fear spread faster than wildfire, generals argued. Nobles demanded evacuation. Messengers raced through the corridors carrying desperate orders that changed by the minute. Only one person remained perfectly still. Lyra Blackthorne quietly folded the blood-stained cloak she had removed from her husband's shoulders and placed it beside him. Her hands never trembled. Her voice never rose. She simply looked at the physician. "How long?" "3 days at most, Your Majesty." She nodded once. "Thank you." Several council members stared at her in disbelief. That was all? No panic, no command, no tears. One elderly duke finally slammed his fist onto the council table. "We need armies, not silence!" Another noble pointed accusingly toward the Luna. "Your Majesty, forgive me, but gentleness cannot save a kingdom. Our enemies are already marching. If the king cannot lead us, someone must." Lyra listened without interruption. When the room finally fell silent, she walked toward a small writing desk near the palace window. She took a single sheet of parchment, one feather quill, one silver seal. She wrote only one sentence. Then she folded the letter and handed it to the oldest palace courier. "Deliver this immediately." The old courier looked at the seal, his weathered eyes widened. Without asking a single question, he bowed deeply. "It will be done." As he disappeared into the storm, another council member shook his head. "One letter? The kingdom is dying." Lyra turned back toward Magnus. She gently brushed a strand of dark hair away from his forehead. "He has carried everyone else for many years. It is our turn to carry him, outside." The first raven carrying the silver-sealed message vanished into the night. Before dawn, identical messengers would be flying toward every corner of the werewolf world. None carried orders, none carried threats, only a quiet invitation from a woman whom history had never feared. Narrator. Before the next sunrise, the entire balance of power would change forever. Stay with this story until the end, because the woman everyone believed was the weakest would soon reveal a truth that even the greatest Alpha Kings never saw coming. Far beyond North Moon's borders, the First Kingdom received the letter. An old Alpha unfolded the parchment. The moment he read the single sentence, he stood without hesitation. "Prepare my escort. We leave immediately, hundreds of miles away." A Luna Queen finished reading the same message. Tears filled her eyes. She finally asked, "Ready the horses, across mountains, forests, frozen valleys, and forgotten kingdoms." The same quiet answer echoed again and again. "For Lyra, we ride." Years before anyone had called her queen, Lyra had already learned the cost of silence, not the silence of fear, the silence of restraint. As the daughter of a respected diplomatic bloodline, she had been taught that a war often began long before the first claw was raised. It began with wounded pride, misunderstood words, forgotten promises, a single act of revenge answered by another. Most rulers prepared for battles. Her mother had prepared her for conversations. When Lyra married Alpha King Magnus Blackthorne, the entire continent celebrated the union of beauty and strength. Magnus became the face of North Moon's military power. Lyra became little more than a pleasant symbol standing beside him during ceremonies. No one questioned it, least of all Magnus. He loved his Luna sincerely. He protected her fiercely. He simply believed the burdens of leadership were too heavy for someone as gentle as she was. Whenever the royal council discussed border conflicts, Magnus would smile warmly and say, "Leave these matters to me." Whenever neighboring pacts demanded negotiations, Lyra quietly replied, "As you wish." She never argued. She never competed. She never tried to prove him wrong, because she had never wanted his throne. She wanted something much harder to achieve. Peace. Several months after their wedding, two rival mountain packs prepared to slaughter one another over an ancient hunting valley. Scouts estimated nearly 2,000 warriors would die before sunset. Magnus was already gathering soldiers to intervene. Without telling anyone, Lyra requested permission to visit a nearby orphan shelter that had supposedly been affected by the unrest. The request seemed harmless. Magnus approved it immediately. Only his most trusted guard captain accompanied her. Instead of traveling to the orphanage first, Lyra rode directly toward the disputed valley. The captain panicked. "Your Majesty, this area is far too dangerous," she smiled gently. "Only because everyone believes no one is willing to listen." When they arrived, hundreds of wolves already stood facing one another across the frozen river. Weapons drawn, tempers burning, one insult away from massacre. The moment both Alpha leaders recognized North Moon's Luna approaching alone, confusion replaced rage. Neither side attacked. Lyra stepped between them. No armor, no guards, no weapon, only a pale blue cloak fluttering in the mountain wind. The older Alpha frowned. "You should not be here," she nodded. "You are correct. I should have arrived much sooner." No one understood the answer. She spent the next 6 hours listening, not speaking, listening. Each Alpha explained decades of betrayal, broken agreements, stolen land, children lost during old border raids. For the first time in years, someone heard both stories without choosing a side. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, Lyra finally asked one question. "If every child standing behind you survives today, which victory will matter more?" Silence answered her. The younger Alpha slowly lowered his sword. The older leader followed moments later. Before midnight, the first peace agreement between the mountain packs had been signed. Not because either side surrendered, because both believed someone had finally treated them with dignity. Magnus never learned the truth. When reports reached the capital, every general assumed the rival Alphas had simply exhausted themselves before battle. Lyra never corrected them. Months became years, again and again. Whenever conflict threatened to consume another region, she quietly found a reason to travel. A harvest festival, a temple visit, a healing pilgrimage, a charitable donation. Officially, the Luna spent much of her time comforting villages. Unofficially, prevented wars. She remembered the names of grieving mothers. She visited wounded warriors from both sides after battles had already ended. She attended funerals without announcing her presence. She quietly funded the rebuilding of burned homes using her personal inheritance instead of the royal treasury. People noticed, not immediately, but steadily. Trust did not arrive through speeches. It arrived through consistency. Years later, an elderly Alpha from the eastern forests told his grandchildren, "If Luna Lyra gives you her word, you may build your future upon it." A healer from the southern coast refused payment from North Moon soldiers. "Your queen once crossed 3 days of storms to bring medicine to my daughter." A merchant whose caravan had been saved from bandits established free trade routes between former enemies because, in his words, She believed strangers could become neighbors. Magnus heard these stories from time to time. He smiled with quiet pride. My wife has a generous heart. He never realized those small acts were slowly reshaping the political map of the entire continent. There were even meetings no royal record ever mentioned. Under the light of every first full moon of spring, representatives from distant packs gathered in secret within an ancient circle of silver birch trees. No banners, no armies, no crowns, only promises. There, old enemies shared food. Young leaders exchanged ideas. Ancient feuds ended with handshakes instead of blood. They called those gatherings the Silver Accord. No one claimed ownership, no kingdom ruled it, no signatures appeared in any official archive. Its only law was simple: leave with more understanding than you brought. Lyra never sat upon a throne during those gatherings. She sat beside everyone else, listening more than speaking. When disagreements arose, she never forced agreement. She asked questions that allowed people to discover agreement for themselves. The Silver Accord grew quietly. One pack became three, three became seven. Eventually, dozens of kingdoms participated. Most of the continent's lasting peace rested upon invisible threads, woven by a woman who preferred being forgotten over being praised. Only a handful of elders knew the entire truth. They protected the secret for one reason. If ambitious rulers discovered where true influence lay, they would either try to control Lyra or destroy her. Back in the present, as the old courier rode through the storm carrying her silver-sealed letter, he whispered to himself, "It has finally happened. For the first time, she is asking us for help, far beyond the northern mountains, hidden beneath towering silver birch trees now glistening with rain. An ancient stone table stood empty beneath the night sky. Within hours, its seats would no longer be empty. The Silver Accord would gather again, not for diplomacy, not for negotiation, but for the woman who had quietly preserved peace while the world believed only kings could shape history. The first horn sounded just before dawn. Its deep, resonant call rolled across the frozen cliffs surrounding North Moon Palace, waking every soldier stationed along the fortress walls. Captain Aldrich looked through his spyglass. A single banner approached from the eastern pass. No army, only 12 riders. At their head rode an elderly Alpha King wrapped in a white wolf cloak faded by countless winters. "The Kingdom of Frosthaven," Aldrich whispered. One of the younger guards frowned. "They have not visited North Moon in almost 20 years. They refused the king's military alliance." Aldrich nodded. "I remember. Open the eastern gate." The old Alpha entered the courtyard without ceremony. The moment he dismounted, every noble expected him to ask about Magnus. Instead, he turned toward the palace entrance. "Where is Luna Lyra?" The chamberlain blinked. "His Majesty remains critically wounded." "I understand. My question was about the Luna." Before anyone could answer, another horn echoed across the valley, then another, one after another. The palace bells began ringing continuously. Messengers sprinted through the corridors. "My lords! More royal delegations!" The western gate opened. The Kingdom of Ashvale arrived. Minutes later, the southern bridge filled with riders carrying the emerald banners of Rivermoon. Then came Stonefang, Silver Coast, Moonridge, the Highland clans, the Eastern Forest Confederation. Kingdoms that had not gathered in one place for generations now entered North Moon together. None displayed battle formations, none marched with hostility. Each delegation carried only a small ceremonial escort. The royal council stared in stunned silence. One elderly minister whispered, "This is impossible. They have spent decades avoiding one another." Yet they arrived peacefully, greeting former rivals with respectful nods, sharing warm embraces, exchanging quiet smiles, as though old enemies had become trusted friends. Inside the royal chamber, Magnus slowly opened his eyes. Pain surged through his chest, the curse still clung to his heart. His vision remained blurred. He recognized only shadows surrounding his bed. Then, he heard unfamiliar voices, dozens of them. "What is happening?" The physician leaned closer. "Your Majesty, you have visitors." Magnus forced himself upright despite the agony. "Generals?" The physician hesitated. "No, kings." Confusion crossed Magnus's face. "Why? We do not know." Outside his chamber, Lyra greeted each arriving ruler with the same gentle smile she had always worn. No royal fanfare, no dramatic speeches, only warmth. The elderly Alpha of Frosthaven bowed deeply. "My queen, you finally called." Lyra returned the bow. "Thank you for coming. You crossed a long road." He smiled kindly. "You once crossed a much longer one for my granddaughter." A younger council member overheard the exchange. His eyes widened. "Granddaughter, when, how?" Before he could ask, another delegation approached. Queen Isabella of Silver Coast stepped forward. Without hesitation, she embraced Lyra. "I prayed this day would never come." Lyra rested one hand upon her shoulder. "So did I." The queen laughed softly through tear-filled eyes. "You always carried everyone else. It is our turn now, one by one." Every arriving ruler greeted Lyra not as a political equal, but as an old friend. Some called her sister, some called her teacher. Others simply took both her hands and thanked her without explanation. The palace servants exchanged bewildered glances. None of them had ever witnessed such affection between sovereign rulers. Magnus slowly entered the grand balcony overlooking the central courtyard. Supported by two physicians, he stood in silence. His breath caught. Thousands of warriors now filled the palace grounds. Not one had drawn a weapon. Instead, they spoke peacefully, shared food, helped stable workers care for exhausted horses. Royal guards from rival kingdoms laughed together while repairing damaged wagons. Magnus frowned. "This makes no sense." His oldest general stepped beside him. "I have spent 40 years studying military alliances. I have never seen anything like this." A trumpet sounded. Every conversation stopped, not because someone commanded silence, because another delegation had arrived. The massive gates slowly opened. Through them rode High Alpha Orion of Ironwood, the most feared military ruler in the Western Territories. Magnus narrowed his eyes. "We fought 3 wars against him." The old general nodded. "And nearly the 4th, Orion dismounted. The enormous Alpha, whose reputation alone terrified entire kingdoms, walked directly toward Lyra. Then, to the absolute disbelief of every witness, he lowered one knee, not before Magnus, before Lyra. "My queen, you sent for us. We have answered." A wave of stunned whispers spread through the courtyard. Magnus gripped the balcony railing. "What? What is he doing?" No one answered, because another Alpha King followed, then another, then another. One after another, the rulers of kingdoms across the continent each bowed before Lyra, not from obligation, from respect. Commander Aldrich whispered, "They are choosing this. No treaty requires it." Nearby, Duchess Helena of Rivermoon approached Magnus. Her expression carried genuine compassion. "Your Majesty, there is something you deserve to know." Magnus looked toward her. "For years, we believed we maintained peace through fear of your armies." She gently shook her head. "We were wrong." He stared silently. The peace survived because your Luna never stopped believing former enemies could become friends. Magnus felt as though the world beneath his feet had shifted. Images flashed through his memory. Every time Lyra requested permission to travel, every charity visit, every quiet pilgrimage, every journey he had considered harmless. Not once had he asked what she truly accomplished. He had assumed kindness was separate from leadership. He now realized kindness had been leading all along. As twilight settled over North Moon, the final delegation arrived. No banners, no royal colors, only a simple silver standard embroidered with a single crescent moon. The entire courtyard instinctively became silent. Every alpha, every queen, every elder turned toward the newcomers. An ancient woman stepped forward. Her silver hair flowed almost to the ground. She carried no weapon, only a weathered wooden staff carved with countless wolf symbols. High Elder Seraphine, guardian of the Silver Accord. She smiled warmly at Lyra. My child, you carried the burden alone for far too long. Lyra lowered her head. I never carried it alone. She slowly looked across the thousands gathered before her. You always answered. The old elder turned toward the assembled rulers. Tomorrow, the ones who profit from endless war will come. They believe they face one kingdom. She smiled. They have not yet realized. They face every heart this woman has ever healed. Beyond the northern horizon, black banners began rising above the distant hills. The Brotherhood of Crimson Claw had arrived. The final test of the peace Lyra had built was about to begin. Black banners appeared across the northern ridge. 1, then 10, then hundreds. Within minutes, the horizon disappeared beneath an ocean of crimson standards bearing the mark of the Brotherhood of Crimson Claw. The Peace Summit had become a battlefield. A cold wind swept across North Moon's central square. Thousands of warriors instinctively reached for their weapons. Steel whispered from its scabbard. Claws extended. Golden eyes glowed. No one attacked. Not yet. From the center of the enemy formation, High Alpha Darius Ironfang rode forward atop a colossal black wolf. His armor was forged from dark iron. A jagged scar split his face from temple to jaw. His smile carried no warmth, only contempt. So, the famous gathering is real. His booming voice echoed across the valley. I wondered who could convince so many rulers to abandon their kingdoms. His eyes settled upon Lyra. Then he laughed. A quiet Luna. How disappointing. No one answered. Darius continued. I expected a conqueror. I found a woman hiding behind other people's armies. Magnus stepped forward, despite the pain still burning through his chest. You will speak to my queen with respect. Darius barely glanced at him. You are dying. You no longer matter. His attention returned to Lyra. Everything you built ends today. The Pax will remember that peace is an illusion. They will remember fear. He slowly raised one armored hand. Behind him, more than 5,000 warriors slammed their weapons against their shields. The mountains trembled. The sound rolled like thunder across the valley. Several young palace guards visibly flinched. Lyra did not. She simply stepped down from the palace stairs. No guards, no armor, no weapon. Only the pale blue cloak she had worn for years. Magnus reached toward her. Lyra. She looked back. Her smile remained calm. If I hide now, everything they trusted me to protect will disappear. She continued walking. One step, then another. The immense square became utterly silent. She stopped halfway between both armies. Darius smirked. You finally understand. Good. Kneel. Swear loyalty. I may allow your people to live. Lyra met his eyes. I have spent years preventing mothers from burying their children. I will not begin today." His smile vanished. "You refuse? I refuse hatred." Darius laughed. Then his laughter became a roar. "Then watch your peace die." He thrust his hand downward. "Archers!" Thousands of bows rose at once. The sky darkened beneath black arrows. Palace guards tightened their shields. Magnus reached for Frostfang. The physicians shouted for him to stop. His wounds reopened immediately. Blood stained the white stone beneath his boots. Still, he stepped forward. "If anyone reaches her, they cross me first." Commander Gareth seized his shoulder. "My king, you cannot. I must." Magnus pulled free. Then something extraordinary happened before a single arrow could be released. A lone Alpha from Frosthaven walked forward, then another from Silver Coast, then Orion of Ironwood, then Queen Isabella, then Elder Seraphine, then dozens more. Without exchanging a single word, they formed a living wall around Lyra. No command had been given, no treaty required it. Every ruler had made the same decision, together. Darius frowned. "What are you doing?" Orion answered first. "We are protecting our queen." Another Alpha stepped beside him. "She saved my son." A Luna from the Southern Territories raised her chin. "She ended the war that killed my father." An elderly chief spoke next. "When famine struck our lands, she came before any king did." Another voice followed. "She remembered our names." Then another. "She buried our dead." Another. "She forgave our mistakes." Another. "She united our children." The voices multiplied. Dozens, hundreds. Every testimony struck harder than any weapon. Magnus stood frozen. He had commanded victories. Lyra had earned devotion. There was a difference. Darius's face twisted with anger. "Enough!" He pointed directly at Lyra. "Kill her!" The first wave charged. Thousands of wolves thundered across the valley. Then, the impossible happened. Before North Moon's soldiers could move, every allied Alpha shifted simultaneously. Gigantic wolves burst across the battlefield. Silver, white, black, gray, golden. The earth shook beneath hundreds of alpha wolves running as one, not toward conquest, toward protection. The collision erupted like a storm, short, violent, explosive. Shields shattered, spears snapped. War cries echoed across the mountains. Magnus drew Frostfang. Blue light exploded from the legendary blade. He entered the battle. One strike, an enemy weapon shattered. Another strike, 3 attackers fell backward, disarmed. A third, the frozen ground split beneath a wave of alpha energy. Yet despite the chaos, his eyes searched for only one person, or she had not moved. Standing calmly behind the defensive line, she called wounded warriors from both sides toward the healers. "Bring him here. He is bleeding. Do not leave anyone behind." One young enemy soldier collapsed only a few yards away. Several Brotherhood warriors ignored him as they continued charging. Lyra ran toward the fallen stranger. She knelt beside him, pressed both hands against the wound. "You are safe." The terrified young wolf stared at her. I attacked you. I know. Why are you helping me?" "Because pain does not choose sides." The young soldier broke into tears. Nearby, 3 Brotherhood veterans lowered their weapons. They had witnessed everything. One whispered, This is why they follow her." Across the battlefield, momentum changed. Not because Darius's army weakened, because his own warriors hesitated. Many refused to continue fighting after watching the woman they had been ordered to kill save one of their own. Darius roared in fury. "Cowards!" He leapt from his wolf. Dark crimson energy erupted around him. The ancient blood dominion awakened. The air itself distorted. Stones cracked. Trees bent. He charged directly toward Lyra. Magnus saw him. Every instinct exploded at once. He intercepted Darius only steps away from her. Their powers collided. Blue moonlight, crimson fury. The shockwave blasted across the valley. Windows shattered. Banners tore free. Snow exploded into the sky. For several heartbeats, neither Alpha yielded. Then Magnus remembered something Lyra had once whispered after comforting grieving families. Strength is measured by what survives after the battle. He stopped fighting with rage. He fought to protect. Frostfang blazed with brilliant silver light. The crimson energy surrounding Darius shattered like glass. The warlord crashed to one knee. His sword spun across the frozen ground. Silence returned, lowly. Lyra walked forward. She stood before thousands of wolves from every kingdom. No crown rested upon her head. No weapon hung at her side. She simply looked across the vast gathering, then, without being asked, or commanded, or compelled, every Alpha King lowered one knee, every Luna bowed her head, every elder placed a hand over their heart. Then the warriors followed. Thousands, then tens of thousands. An entire continent bowed before the woman they trusted most. A single voice rose above the silence. Then another. Then countless more. Lyra, our queen. Lyra, our queen. The chant rolled across the mountains like living thunder. Magnus felt tears sting his eyes, not from pain, from understanding. For years, he had believed he was protecting his Luna. Only now did he finally realize she had been protecting the entire world. The chant continued long after the battle had ended. Lyra, our queen. Lyra, our queen. It echoed across the valley until even the mountains seemed to carry her name. No army had ordered it. No law demanded it. Respect had spoken with one voice. Darius Ironfang remained on one knee where Magnus had defeated him. His shattered sword lay half buried in the frozen earth, its crimson glow extinguished forever. For the first time in decades, the warlord looked afraid, not of Magnus, of the future. He slowly lifted his eyes toward the thousands of wolves standing together. No, you cannot remain united. You hate one another. You always have. An elderly Alpha from Frosthaven stepped forward. We did. Queen Isabella of Silver Coast joined him, until she reminded us that hatred is learned. Orion of Ironwood folded his powerful arms, and peace can be learned as well. Darius shook his head in disbelief. You are rulers. You should fear one another. Lyra looked at him with quiet compassion. We feared losing one another far more. Her answer struck the valley with greater force than any weapon. One by one, members of the Brotherhood of Crimson Claw lowered their swords. Some removed their helmets. Others simply dropped to their knees. They had marched expecting conquest. Instead, they had witnessed mercy. A young captain stepped away from the Brotherhood's ranks. He removed the crimson emblem from his armor and placed it gently upon the ground. I will not fight against hope, another warrior followed. Then another. Within moments, hundreds abandoned the Brotherhood without shedding another drop of blood. Darius watched in horror as the army he had spent decades building dissolved before his eyes. No! You belong to me. The young captain calmly met his gaze. We never belonged to you. We only feared you. There is a difference. Royal guards quietly surrounded the remaining Brotherhood officers. No blows were exchanged. No executions took place. The battle had already been decided inside the hearts of those who had once followed Darius. Magnus finally allowed himself to breathe. The cursed wound beneath his armor still burned fiercely. blood continued soaking through the black steel across his chest. Commander Gareth hurried toward him. "My king, you need the healers immediately." Magnus barely heard him. His eyes remained fixed upon Lyra. She was moving through the battlefield, not celebrating, not accepting praise. She knelt beside wounded soldiers, enemy and ally alike, holding trembling hands, offering water, comforting frightened families searching for loved ones, exactly as she always had. Nothing about victory had changed her, only everyone else's understanding of her. Magnus felt something break inside him. Not pride, regret. He remembered every meeting where he had spoken over her, every journey he had dismissed as charity, every moment he had smiled kindly while assuming she simply wished to avoid politics. She had never avoided leadership. She had redefined it. His knees weakened. Commander Gareth reached to support him. Magnus gently moved the hand aside. "No, I must do this myself." Ignoring the blood running beneath his armor, he slowly crossed the battlefield. Thousands noticed. The conversations gradually faded. Every eye followed the wounded Alpha King. Lyra turned as he approached. Concern immediately filled her face. "You should not be walking. You need treatment." Magnus smiled faintly. "There is something I have needed far longer than healing." He stopped only a few feet before her. The valley became perfectly still. Without hesitation, Alpha King Magnus Blackthorne lowered himself onto both knees. A gasp swept through the gathered kingdoms. No Alpha King had knelt before another living soul in generations. Magnus lowered his head. "I thought strength was measured by victory." His voice trembled. "Thought leadership belonged to the loudest voice." A tear slipped down his weathered face. "I was wrong." He looked into Lyra's gentle eyes. "You crossed battlefields I never saw. You ended wars I never knew existed. You carried burdens I should have shared." His breathing grew heavier. "And I never thanked you." Silence embraced every word. Magnus reached for her hands. They were warm despite the winter air. "So today, before every kingdom, I ask your forgiveness. I underestimated the greatest leader I have ever known." Many warriors quietly wiped tears from their faces. Even Orion of Ironwood lowered his eyes in respect. Lyra's own eyes shimmered. She gently placed one hand against Magnus's cheek. "I never wanted you to feel ashamed. I only wanted you to come home safely." Magnus closed his eyes. "I almost lost the chance." "You did not," she smiled. "You are here, and tomorrow gives us another opportunity to lead together." She helped him rise. The moment he stood, the entire valley erupted into applause, not for victory, for humility. Nearby, Commander Gareth escorted Darius Ironfang, Duchess Celine Voss, and the remaining Brotherhood leaders before the assembled rulers. High Elder Seraphine stepped forward. "For decades, you profited from grief. You manipulated fear. You turned children into soldiers." She looked toward Lyra. "The judgment belongs to the woman you tried to destroy." Every eye turned toward the Luna. Darius laughed bitterly. "Go ahead. Become what I always claimed you were. Rule through revenge." Lyra remained silent for several moments. Then she answered, "If I punish you with hatred, you will have already won." She looked toward the Council of Kings. "My judgment is this. The Brotherhood of Crimson Claw shall be dissolved forever. Its stolen wealth will rebuild every village destroyed by its wars. The children forced into its ranks will return home. The guilty leaders will spend the remainder of their lives restoring the communities they helped destroy." She met Darius's eyes. "You will witness peace every day, and you will help build it." Darius stared at her in disbelief. You spare me? I hold you accountable. There is a difference. Even High Elder Seraphine smiled. The moon has chosen wisely. As the sun broke through the storm clouds, warm golden light washed across the battlefield. Magnus slipped his hand into Lyra's, this time, not as a king leading his queen, but as a husband finally walking beside his equal. Far above the valley, hidden beyond the clouds, an ancient silver light began gathering around the forgotten moon crown. After centuries of waiting, it had finally found the ruler worthy of wearing it. 7 days later, every kingdom gathered once again beneath the ancient moon oak that stood at the heart of North Moon. There were no war banners, no sharpened weapons, no lines dividing friend from former enemy. Instead, wolves from every territory stood side by side, their children laughing together where soldiers had nearly fallen only a week before. The valley that had almost become a graveyard had become a place of new beginnings. High Elder Seraphine stepped into the center of the gathering, carrying a simple silver crown. Unlike the jeweled crowns worn by monarchs, this one bore only intertwined branches and a single crescent moon. It was forged centuries ago, she said, her voice carrying across the silent valley. It has never belonged to the strongest warrior. It has always belonged to the one who united hearts. She turned toward Lyra. For generations we waited. Today the waiting ends. Lyra bowed her head with quiet humility. I never sought a crown, Seraphine smiled. That is precisely why you deserve one. She gently placed the moon crown upon Lyra's head. The moment the silver touched her hair, warm moonlight descended through the clear afternoon sky. White wolves emerged from every forest path. Birds circled overhead without fear. The wind carried thousands of silver blossoms through the valley. No one spoke. Every soul present understood they were witnessing history. Magnus stepped beside his Luna and took her hand. His strength had returned, but something far more important had changed within him. He no longer measured leadership by victories won in battle. He measured it by lives protected afterward. Facing the gathered kingdoms, he spoke with calm conviction. I once believed peace survived because powerful rulers inspired fear. He looked toward Lyra. My queen showed me that peace survives because ordinary people choose to trust. I was never diminished by standing beside her. I became a better king because I finally learned to walk beside her. Warm applause spread through the valley, not loud, not triumphant, grateful. One by one, the Alpha Kings stepped forward. Each removed a ceremonial medal, ring, or token from their own kingdom and placed it upon a stone before Lyra. None were gifts of submission, they were promises. A promise that the peace she had nurtured would continue long after this day. Children from every pack then gathered around the stone. Together they planted a young silver oak beside it. High Elder Seraphine smiled. May this tree remind every generation that unity grows slowly, but its roots endure. As the ceremony ended, Magnus quietly wrapped one arm around Lyra's shoulders. She rested her head against him. Neither needed another speech. Their silence now carried perfect understanding. The kingdoms returned home not with new enemies, but with new neighbors, and the story of the quiet Luna who united the werewolf world became a legend told wherever wolves gathered beneath the moon. Voiceover outro. What do you believe should have happened to Darius Ironfang? Did Lyra make the right choice by giving him a lifetime of accountability instead of execution? Or should some betrayals never be forgiven? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more unforgettable werewolf and shifter romance adventures where courage, compassion, and destiny shape extraordinary lives.